Hi, this is Grant Cameron from the KGARA podcast, The Cameron Files. What follows today is a follow-up interview I did with my friend Chris. Chris, for those who haven't followed my previous interviews, is a Hollywood A-lister. He has 2 family members who have stars on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. He himself has been on the red carpet a few times. He also has been in a couple of movies and has had a band, and some of his music has appeared in movies. Today I talk with Chris as an extension to other interviews I've done, which goes more into his experience, which started 9 months ago. Today I will talk with him about, number one, the birds that have been a part of his experience. He's had experience with hawks, owls, and hummingbirds. Then I will talk to him about his attempts to film the phenomena that has surrounded him for the last 9 months. His effort to buy cameras, to film, the problems he's had with film. And finally, we talk a lot about the environment. And this seems to be a big part of Chris's story. As you listen, you'll see he gets a little emotional when he talks about this. It's an important part that many experiencers have mentioned, the environment of the earth. So sit back and enjoy. Good evening. I'm joined by my friend Chris, and I want to go through a little bit of an update as to what's been going on. One of the parts of the story that we had sort of missed talking to you about before was what you mentioned in your first video is the association to animals, to this phenomena that you're experiencing. Can you go through, starting with the hawks and then to the other animals that you've had that seem to be tied into this?
Yeah, absolutely. Again, amazing to be with you guys. Thank you again for everything, Grant. I love both of you and everything that you're doing, so I appreciate being here with you. And so hi to everybody else. Yeah. So basically, how I kind of got any kind of idea about the bird connection is one night. It was about 11:30 at night, and I'm in my bedroom with my kitty, Ween. My kitty's name is Ween, by the way, everyone. And so Ween and I are sitting in the bedroom with the lights off. We have a big window that looks at our garden. And above our garden, in our garden, we have these fruit trees, and then we have these telephone pole lines that run about 20 feet off the ground. And so I'm looking out the window with Ween, and Ween starts to kind of like zip her head from left to right, kind of looking at something, and I'm staring kind of at the ground. I look up, and I see maybe 10 feet above the power lines, a big shadow, an outline of this, and I'd seen it once before. And so basically it looked like a giant hawk, like the silhouette of a giant hawk, maybe 50 feet long, and it was one of the craft. And I had seen it once before when this first began. I was in my driveway, and I was looking above our roof, maybe 10 feet above our roof, and this fireball came out of the nothingness. This golden fireball basically shot across our roof. And that was the first time I had seen it, and I was totally blown away. And it shot across our roof, and then like 15, 20 feet, then disappeared. And I was in sort of like awe. And as I was sort of looking up to see where that came from, I had seen this big silhouette of a hawk, and I was like, "What the? What is that? Was it a pterodactyl?" I see this silhouette that is like almost like a craft, but almost like an outline of a giant hawk. And so that was the first experience. So that night, Ween and I are sitting there, and she's looking around, and I look up above the power lines, maybe 10 or 15 feet, whatever it was, and I see this silhouette, and it was only for maybe 5-6 seconds, but I see it kind of like go off into the southwest direction. And by the way, when they come, they always come from the southwest in the sky. So maybe a couple weeks after that, that night, I was having all the contact, and so I started noticing during the daytime, as I was like walking outside, I would see these hawks flying in the sky. Oh, by the way, sorry, I forgot. When the contact first started, before I saw anything, before the very first thing, not the daytime sighting, that was just kind of an anomaly. But after that, every time that I would have contact, before I would have contact, I would always hear a screeching of a loud bird, and it sounded like a hawk screeching. Could have been an owl, but it sounded like a hawk. I'd hear the screeching, and then 10 or 15 minutes later, I'd have the sighting. So after that experience, I started seeing hawks flying in the sky all the time, always kind of flying over our house in pairs. And that went on for like a couple weeks. And then one day I was in our kitchen, and it was during the daytime, and I'm getting ready to go to work, and I walk out of the house off the side of the kitchen, and I walk out to the driveway, and literally as I open our fence to like walk through the fence, something whooshes by my head. I feel something touch the top of my head. I'm like startled. I'm like, what? And I look up, and literally this hawk had just flown across my head, feet, I think, touched my head, and it lands 10 feet in front of me in our driveway and stares at me. And this is during the daytime, like, almost middle of the day. And I sat there and I was like, whoa. And I just was totally blown away. And then it took off. And then so basically I started having these experiences where these hawks would fly super close to me or land on my car, or, I was sitting out in our backyard having lunch one day, and two hawks landed and flew and landed on the table where I was sitting and just stood there, these big hawks. So what happened is I was, obviously it was like they were saying, okay, wake up, idiot. We're trying to make contact with you.
Okay.
So I started to incorporate, I have this prayer that I do every day, that I thank them and I thank other sort of beings that I connect with, and I incorporated them into a prayer, and so basically that was the beginning of this connection. And I just started to really realize that there was some kind of very real connection between hawks, but I think maybe all birds, and these beings, whoever they are. And that was how the hawk story started. So that's how that started.
Have you asked about them, to the sort of the source that you're talking to? Have you asked them about what's going on?
Yeah, I have. I have, asked about that, and basically hawks and other kinds of birds, hummingbirds as well, and owls, have a specific connection to them. I don't really know exactly, what they've said is that they're somehow related somehow. They're somehow connected somehow. They're a representation of them somehow here. But these beings, whoever they are, they're very deeply connected with nature. Nature is a major thing, a connection with them. And they use real hawks and birds to send messages in terms of if they want to connect with somebody, if they can't be there. And they also can manifest an image of a hawk or some other kind of bird to send messages. It hasn't been like a really in-depth like description and like origin story, but it was just when I talked to this one being, it's very clear and direct, but it's like 1 or 2 line answers. Sometimes it gets a little bit longer, but it's not, unless it's like a informational download thing, but that's basically it. Yeah. But nature is a huge part of this connection for them.
What about the hummingbirds? You had hummingbirds as well?
Yeah, this was a little bit more of a dramatic, interesting story. So after this whole thing started, I started doing this prayer every day where I just thank them. I tell them how much I love them. I acknowledge them. I want to send love to their families and their worlds, and that we're all one family and that we're connected. And I ask for the mind, body, spirit, and strength to really make real changes and be a part of that, rather than just do videos and talk, but real changes, and just this kind of elaborate prayer that probably is partially out of anxiety to try to make myself feel safe in my own space, but it's also a real earnest, heartfelt connection to connect with them. So this was this prayer that I do, and it's a little OCD, I admit it. That's fine. Whatever it is, I'm doing my best. So we've been into this thing now for 9 months. So maybe, let's say maybe a month and a half ago, I work outside at our house, a lot. I started to notice this hummingbird when I was out in our yard. And, hummingbirds are normally very skittish. They zip in, they do the flower, and then they're gone. They don't usually hang out with people. When they see a person, they run away. So I'm out in my yard, and I look above my roof, and I see this little hummingbird that's hovering maybe a couple feet above the roof, and he's looking directly at me one day. And he's like just staring at me. And I thought, oh, that's a little weird, and then he zipped away. And this happened then, and then, a couple days later, same kind of thing. And then it started happening pretty much every day. And I thought, oh, that's really interesting. This, I think maybe that's, maybe them connecting with me somehow. So I started to incorporate a hummingbird teacher. I call them teachers. I say, thank you, hawk teacher. Thank you, being family, blah, 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 that kind of thing. So I started incorporating hummingbird as my teacher with hawk. So I started doing this for a couple of weeks after this was going on. And so like a couple days ago, I go out to our garden and I'm walking over, and every morning when I get up and I go outside before I work, I connect with the tree. I put my hand, I know this sounds really goofy, but I put my hand on a tree and I say, I love you, tree. And try to listen, just for any kind of connection, and send them love, flowers, all of it, Mother Earth. I put my hands on Mother Earth and I imagine that I can send her healing energy, and all the beings in the world are healing her at one time, and we're all healing us together. All, just real crazy shit. So, but I believe it. And I believe that there's something to it. So I'm doing all this, and I'm in the bushes with a tree, and I'm standing there kind of hidden. And all of a sudden, this hummingbird flies in to where I'm at and lands on a branch 5 inches from my face, and sits there with me and doesn't move, staring right at me. And I'm like, all right, this is my hummingbird teacher. And I start saying, thank you, love you. And this hummingbird sits there, Grant, with me for 15 minutes. Wow. And I'm moving around. I'm touching my face. I'm itching my beard. And it's not moving. And it's staring right at me. And it's literally 5 inches from my face. And I found that to be an amazing moment. And so then it eventually split after 15 minutes. I go to work. I go back. Maybe half an hour later, I go back to the same spot. The hummingbird flies back in, sits there again with me for another 10 minutes, 2 inches from my face. And now this hummingbird every day comes, I'll be working at the computer outside. It'll land on the desk and it'll just sit there, look at me. And I'll just basically say, thank you, teacher, love you. I don't know what the teachings are yet. I think it's about realizing that, love and connection, there's a lot more to that, and the willingness to believe in the most outlandish stuff, if it's centered and the intention is about connection and love and compassion and oneness and healing coming from that place. There's something about that vibration when you kind of just say, okay, I'm going to go with this. There's something about nature, all these things start to hear you and respond. And I think they start to see, they read something on you, they smell something. And there starts to be a real exchange that is like Disney stuff. What you would see in a Disney movie, like, the dancing and singing nature, like the Disney movie was just going down the little trail and all the birds and everybody. That kind of shit is happening now. Wow. I mean, nobody's broken out of like a little, like a stovetop pipe and did like a little jig dance in the Golden Highway. But, short of that, I mean, this stuff is, I wish to God I could take a photo with my brain and film all this stuff and give it to each one of the people that are watching these videos and have them experience this, because it's really happening. I'm not making this up, people.
Yeah.
You know, so anyways, yeah.
You talk about a lot about love, connection to the nature. Did you have this kind of
No,
attitude before this
never.
experience started?
No, man. No, no. I mean, I grew up with a father that was super violent. He threw me into boxing and martial arts and fighting, and you know, I had a very sensitive, beautiful mother, you know, and I was a compassionate person, you know, but no, not at all. No, I mean, the closest I got to nature was jumping in an ocean, you know, but that's about it. I wasn't at all this person.
So this has changed your life then completely.
It shattered my life, Grant. It's not in a bad way,
Yeah.
but I am in a perpetual state of almost, not from a depression or sad place, but from tears. You know, I am so moved and so viscerally on the edge of my heart with this entire experience. And I so desperately want to convey and share that with every single person that's watching or listening to you. I just want to, I don't have the words, and I don't have the capability with the cameras and to capture everything the way it's happening, but I'm chasing it for me and for everybody, because there is a real thing happening here. And our responsibility to each other and changing our consciousness to each other and how we take care of this planet and each other and deal with each other, that's the only thing that anybody, all of us, should be focusing on. Because in my opinion, it's all about consciousness, and that consciousness is a physical, material world. Let's talk about the natural state of all things, which we know is a physical world.
Yep.
That's, in my opinion, like the natural state of all things. 99% of the physical, material, natural state is this space of consciousness, which is an actual physical realm, a material realm where all things are possible. Creation, love is at the center, the constitution of this universal something that's creating all this. But that's everything. That's everything. The 1% is this physical thing that we're in. And I'm lost. I don't know what I was saying. But basically what I'm saying is I'm in this place that I'm grasping for straws in this emotional space of love and compassion, and totally consumed by the we have so much control and power in our own hands as human beings, and all of that is consciousness and choice. And so anyway, so yeah, nature is everything, consciousness is everything, and our responsibility to each other is everything. And I think we're chasing too many straws that lead, you know, everybody talks about, you know, let's find 0 point energy, and but all of that wouldn't do us any good if we don't change who we are inside and how we see everything, our consciousness. And that's everything. You know, what they said to me last night as I was talking about this, you know, because I don't think there's anything wrong with chasing 0 point energy and craft and all these different things. Of course, those are brilliant things that'll change the planet. But if we don't change, if we don't understand that consciousness, love and compassion somehow is the DNA of this consciousness. And this consciousness is not just a place we close our eyes and think of. It's all around us. There are many beings all around us just out of eyesight. that are physically swimming all around us, and we are the same as them, except we are in this physical form at this time. And so if we realize that love and compassion, and say, okay, now, not just love and compassion, not just the word consciousness, but how are we physically going to put our differences aside? How are we physically going to take physical action to heal the planet? Not just say the words heal the planet, but like, how can we all come together and then have this space of like, okay, let's try to be friends with all our differences and physically, and own that space consciously. And then look at all these other things, but I'm just rambling. But the point is that, all these things that people are talking about going after, if you're not responsible as a human being and not willing to embrace each other, it's just going to lead to more destruction and pain and suffering, even with 0 point energy or a craft that could go to here to, I don't know. I just kind of keep coming back to this consciousness thing, because there's more to it than just these lofty notions. It's this physical, and why I say it's a physical material world is because they changed my eyesight 2 months ago, where I'm seeing every night in my house these literally probably spirit orbs, this mist that's alive and conscious, this electrical dot energy that when I sit on my couch in the darkness and I hold out my hand and I say in my head, love you, energy being family, it starts to gather around my hand and I can't see my fingers, Grant. And I know my hand's attached to it. I literally have told Desta this. I've had to check my hand multiple times because portions of my fingers disappear. And I'm thinking, okay, am I not seeing my fingers, or is something obstructing? And it gathers more and more, like there's more of it when I talk to this thing. So I know it's conscious and it's interacting with me and it's swimming all around us at all times. That's really what's going on. So that's what I'm talking about. That space is consciousness. That's the physical world that we live in. And that's the 99% of everything that is, rather than this 1% of material world. I don't know. I don't know what I'm talking about. I'm just trying to describe to you what I'm seeing and what I'm feeling.
It's wonderfully said. It's a very deep message that you're putting out, and so congratulations.
Thanks. Did any of that make sense?
Oh yes. I mean, and that I think you're going to try to put across in the documentary. Are you going to try to deal with that aspect of the real meaning to what's going on here?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, absolutely. The biocentric consciousness documentary, for sure. I'm going to focus on Robert Lanza's theory of biocentricism, and I'm going to try to unfold that for the audience in layman's terms, because I'm certainly not an expert on it, and it's pretty technical stuff. But I'm going to focus on that, but I'm also going to try to, elaborate on what I'm talking about. And I'm also going to do that in other videos as I learn what it is. I mean, because honestly, what I'm trying to do in this interview and anything else I put out is I'm literally describing to you what I'm seeing and feeling. I'm not an expert to say, oh, they come from Venus and the origin is half monkey and half flying weenie. I don't know. But I'm telling you, like, I'm sitting in my house every night and I'm seeing on command hundreds of orbs and energy lights flying all around, and not only flying around, but when I speak to them in my head, they multiply and gather around. If I hold my hand out and I say, touch my hand, they multiply around my hand and I start to feel a cool breeze on my hand. I start to see all of this. So I'm just trying to describe to the audience what I'm seeing. But beyond that, it's just snippets of information or things, So yeah, I'm going to always try to go deeper with the stuff.
Beautiful. Let's go back to the birds. You had owls as well, so let's go through that. What happened there?
Okay, so with owls, for sure the owls are part of this thing as well. When this first started, I would have owls that would land literally on branches, sort of like right above our house, and then hop over to our roof and stare at me. And then 5 or 10 minutes later, I'd have this experience with a craft, that kind of thing. But one night in particular, this was a really weird thing. So we have a house that has, you know, a couple windows, you know, a bathroom window that's sort of small, like maybe a half a foot wide, maybe 2 or 3 feet long.
Yeah.
I'm kind of anal about closing all the windows at night, making sure the doors are locked. Not so much because I'm scared of them or whatever. It's more has to do with growing up with a violent father, and it's just kind of a post-traumatic stress thing from those years. But I got through that. So one night, it's about maybe 1:30 in the morning. I'm sleeping. My wife and I, everybody's there. I get up to go to the bathroom that's right off of our bedroom. I use the bathroom, go back to bed. I wake my wife up by accident. She gets up maybe 30 minutes later, goes to the bathroom and screams, "Christopher, get in here. What?" I'm like, what? I run into the bathroom. I switch on the light. There's this 5-foot owl sitting on the sink in our bathroom. And I'm like, what the, you know, and I look at the window's shut. There's no doors open. There's no anything open in the house. My wife is seeing this and freaking out. And out of terror, I don't know what to do. I close the bathroom door. I get her out of the bathroom. I close the bathroom door. She runs to the front of the house. And I'm like, you know, I'm a huge animal lover. I'm like, okay, how do I get an owl out of the house? And I go back to the bedroom, to the bathroom, and open the door, and it's gone.
Wow.
And the window's not open. She didn't go back to the bathroom and open the door. I kept the door shut. I put like something in front of the door, you know. So, yeah, I think owls are a part of this.
So you're saying it like it was like the size of a human being, like 5 feet tall?
No, it was. I wouldn't say a full-grown person. It was probably bigger than a normal owl. I'd say maybe 4.5, 5 feet tall, maybe about half, 2 feet wide.
Yeah. Wow.
And brown with a very white face, not super big eyes, like little, you know, kind of little eyes. But yeah, big kind of beaky thing, you know, like it was, yeah. So yeah, so that was I mean, I don't even know how to tell. That was just a crazy experience. And
how do you explain that to your wife? Like, did you have a conversation about this?
When this all started, my mom, I told you about my mom had kind of a very weird reaction. My wife is English and very, you know, Church of England, and and she's come a long way in her, you know, since she's met me. But basically she was, you know, very kind of straight up and down kind of person, didn't believe in this kind of stuff. And so when I first started telling her this, number one, she was witness to a craft flashing one night, which she ran into the house saying, I don't know what that is, but I don't want to see that. But she was really kind of angry at me for even bringing this stuff up, and every time I would bring it up, you know. Yeah. But over the months, basically, she's kind of mellowed a lot, and now she totally believes it. And actually, a lot of these kind of things that we're talking about have started to incorporate in her life. So when that happened, it was kind of early on, and I think, you know, she was angry at me. You know, I think she felt like somehow I had made that happen, and maybe I did. You know, I think she was really scared and angry and freaked out. And but I think at the end of the day, she kind of she made herself feel like that it was just an owl, and somehow got in and got out, and I let that go. You know,
yeah.
Because I don't. You know, this is a lot. I mean, I went through so much with this, like, questioning my own reality and just all of it, you know, for many months, you know. So it's a lot for somebody to digest. And if somebody wants to stay in that space at that time, then great. I'm going to let them. I don't need to force anybody to, you know, but she's in a lot different place now.